You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, you made it, episode 17, and today we have a very special guest, Mad Fientist. This guy is arguably on the Mount Rushmore of FI. He has been credited with authoring the Roth Conversion Ladder, how to make the tax code work for the early retiree and get the best of both worlds. A world in which you can put your money into your tax-advantaged vehicles tax-free and pull it out tax-free using pre-existing laws that were already in place that nobody, including very, very high-level accountants, had just missed. They just totally missed it. And today, we've gotten him on the show, and we're going to take a chance just to take a step back and look at his origin story. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And I have Brad, obviously, here with me today to help me do this, and also Brandon, the Mad Fientist. Thanks for coming on the show, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. So we want to unpack the story of the Mad Fientist, the origin story. I think, everybody in this space knows you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And lucky we become close friends in the last couple of years, met at FinCon a bunch of times, and I've gotten to know you. But I think your readers see all these optimizations. And in my mind, I sometimes think of your guinea pig. And how that, is that really Brandon? Is he as optimized as that? And I'd love to just hear your story, to dive into it and say, like, where did you start? Where do you optimize? Where do you not walk the walk? And we'll get into all this, obviously, but that's kind of what I'm looking for, is for you to really share who is the Mad Fientist.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to share it. And yeah, you'll have, as you said, we've been friends for years, so it'll be interesting fielding questions from you because you've known me and you've seen me grow and change over the years, I'm sure.
Yep, for sure.
Another thing that's really cool that I think is a little different is you have 30-something odd podcasts, and most of them are interview-based with different guests, but your content really hasn't been featured on a podcast before, and you've been writing probably more than you've been doing interviews. How many articles do you have now?
Yeah, not too many more, actually. I think I was looking today, actually, and total number of posts published on my site is about 90. So yeah, I guess like 32 of those are podcasts. So, the rest are all the articles. But yeah, considering I've been doing this since early 2012, it's a shockingly small amount of stuff I've actually published.
But it's very heavily concentrated. I mean, the information that you've really put together and accumulated, you had to dig through the weeds to find this stuff. And I know a lot of people reference it as almost a pillar post that they can go to when they're trying to figure out how to incorporate these really heavy IRS documents into their own life.
Yeah, no, I definitely focused on quality over quantity. And anytime I would get stressed out about like, oh man, it's been like a couple months since I've actually published anything, I'd always just try to tell myself, it's not the amount of stuff that I put out, it's the quality of it. So that's always been a focus. A lot of it is my laziness as well, though. I can't just say that I'm sitting here working 40 hours a week, coming up with these like amazing articles. And that's why it's always, months in between publishing stuff. But it's a little bit of both, I guess.
So all your tax optimization articles, I think that's where a lot of people know you and know, like Jonathan referenced, you diving into IRS documents. You're not an accountant. You're a computer coding. How did you get into this? I can just picture your wife, Jill, sitting there shaking her head, watching you pour through documents. Like, what does that process look like? How do you get excited about that?
So the whole Mad Fientist came about because I thought that, like I was like everyone else when they stumbled upon this whole world, like I found early retirement extreme first. And, I was super excited about it. And I was like, well, this is what I've been saving for all these years. This is actually a goal, because before that, it was like just a goal to get rich. And I didn't know why I wanted to be rich. I just knew I wanted to have a lot of money. I liked managing money. I liked thinking about money and planning and all that sort of stuff. But I had no real goal for the money. Like I never wanted a fancy car or a big house or any of that stuff. So I was just saving for the sake of saving and just to have a portfolio. So when I stumbled upon Early Retirement Extreme, I was like, oh man, this is exactly what I've been saving for, and this is perfect. So I was super excited about it, but then I knew that there was ways that I could get there quicker if I really put in some research and like dove into some, like, at the time I thought it was going to be like investing strategies. So I was like, oh yeah, if I really spent some time learning about investing and figuring out all these investing strategies, then I could get there a lot quicker. So I was like, all right, well, I'll start a site and I'll write about it. And then the need to publish more posts will make me actually do the research that I know I could do to reach financial independence quicker. So I started researching into that investing route and quickly realized that, passive investing is by far more successful than any other type of investing. And there's a possibility that I could beat the market by actively managing my portfolio, but really the odds are against me. And the expenses are against me, and the taxes are against me, and all the other things that active investing, the downsides of active investing, those are all against me. So I was like, all right, well, that's not going to work. And then I started looking into some other things, and that's what ended up leading to like the whole tax avoidance thing, which when I set out, I had no intention of being like the tax avoidance guy, and I knew nothing about taxes. I always did my own taxes, but they were quite simple. So it wasn't like I was doing that in my career before. It was like fairly simple taxes I was doing. So I sort of just fell into it naturally, just all selfishly, just like trying to find ways to help me get to financial independence quicker.
But how did that even come about? Like what even clued you in? Was it something you read on ERE? Before I read your stuff, and full disclosure, like I'm a CPA here, right? And I honestly loathe taxes. I don't know how I got into that industry, but but like I couldn't imagine sitting there and pouring through these documents or getting excited about this. What was that spark for you? Do you remember?
Yeah. At the time, I was reading a lot of personal finance blogs. So like the first blog I ever read was Get Rich Slowly. And up until that point, I didn't even know what a blog was, which is terrible because I'm a computer science major in college. And you would think that being a computer science major, I'd be a computer geek and stuff like that. But I actually got into comp sci because I was good at math and I liked math. So I was never like a computer nerd, like up all night hacking or doing anything like that. So I really didn't even know what a blog was until I stumbled on Get Rich Slowly. And I was like, whoa, this is just this normal guy called JD, and he's writing all this amazing stuff about his, finances. So that led to a lot of other, sites, and I was just consuming loads and loads of personal finance stuff. So I would read these personal finance things and like a recommendation like, oh, you should do a Roth IRA. I'm reading these things and I'm just thinking, well, yeah, that for the whole vast majority of the world, that makes sense. But early retirees are such a different breed that all of this like standard financial advice that you just read and hear all the time when you're reading personal finance blogs and other mainstream finance sites, it just doesn't apply. So I was always like, all right, I'm looking at this through the very focused lens of early retirement. So all of this stuff that doesn't really make sense, I want to find the thing that does make sense. And so then I just started running numbers and like looking into that would lead to like, well, questions about the tax code. And then I'd have to look into the documents or, do Google searches and hopefully find an article that maybe somebody else had summarized some part of it. But a lot of the time, it was just leading to these tax documents that I had to then investigate. Luckily, it was so focused that at least I had like a goal. So it wasn't like I was just thumbing through like hundreds of pages of IRS documents to find loopholes. It was always sort of like that core idea of this is what I'm hearing all the time. It doesn't apply to early retirement. I'm going to try to figure out a better way, and then it's trying to find the answer. So it was a lot more focused.
There's like three things that I'm thinking of as you're saying this. One, Brad was also getting excited about when you said early retirees are such a different breed, and they absolutely are. And all the people that have put all that effort into financial planning, isn't it always targeted to the person that's going to work for 40 or 50 years and retire at 65 and then collect Social Security?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're kind of this front runner. I wouldn't necessarily say you're the first, but you're definitely a leader in this space. And what you did is you accumulated resources for people that were interested in this alternate path that nobody was talking about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And you built this repository of resources of specific investing and tax optimization advice that only applied to this little niche that we're in.
Right. Yeah. And the audience helped drive a lot of it as well. So like I wrote one of my first, tax optimization posts, and people loved it, and I got lots of great feedback, and I was like, oh, so people are really into this as well, which then led me to like think, well, what else is out there that I could optimize? And then even some cases, one article, somebody would leave a comment and say, hey, have you even thought of this? And then that would lead down an entirely new rabbit hole. And that's how sort of that back catalog of tax optimizations started being built, because you're right, at the time, tax avoidance wasn't even like a buzzword or anything. And there wasn't like, no one had even mentioned or knew what a Roth Conversion Ladder was, or any of these sort of phrases that you hear all the time now. Like none of that was around. So yeah, it just all sort of came about naturally, which was really exciting for me, because I was learning about these things and, applying them to my own life. So I was speeding up my own journey at the same time that I was helping everybody else speed up theirs.
And I want to plug both your audience and our audience with this one. And just because of what you just said, because learning is absolutely a two-way street. And what you've done and what I do and Brad does and most of us in the community is we get an idea and then we explore that idea and we find out more about it. But until someone plants that seed that it's possible or that it's there, it's really hard to get started with it. So your audience jumping onto and they are extremely active on your website, leaving those comments. I mean, those comments are incredibly insightful. And so when you leave comments on his site or our site, that isn't just there and just collecting dust. A lot of times it's the inspiration for us to go get a better answer or do research. And that's what Brandon's saying that he basically did, right? That gave you the direction for the next several years. Right.
And that's still what I do. So like, obviously now my site has grown so much that I can't reply to every single comment like I used to, which really kills me, because like I said, I've drawn so much inspiration from those comments. So I don't actually reply to many comments at all now, which is terrible, but I would much rather just continue like researching things and producing more content. But it's not, I don't not read the comments. So I'm currently redesigning my site. And as part of that redesign, I'm also going through every single post. And I'm like, how can I make this better? How can I improve this? And if I can't, is it worthwhile keeping it on my site at all? Should I remove it? So a big part of that process is me going through all of those excellent comments, some of which I've replied to back in the day or even recently, and some of them I haven't, and going through and then diving into some of those questions, either to then add it to the post and make the post even better, or to actually do even more research, because some of the comments are like leading me down new rabbit holes. So yeah, it's still, that process is still happening. It's just a bit different now that the site has grown so much. But yeah, that's hugely important.
Yeah. And Brandon, I love things that just make me see the world differently than before I read it. And I can definitely point to Jim Collins's stock series is one that literally changed the entire trajectory of my investing life. And yours with basically not investing in a Roth IRA and then the Roth IRA conversion ladder. Those are things that I just reflexively, and this is so pathetic, honestly, to admit this as a math person, but for me, it was always, you hear in the public consciousness that Roth IRAs are the best because down the road, you pay $0 in taxes on it. Right. But I never looked at the math, and I never thought of it from that different perspective of, like you said, we're a different breed. Right. If you can, while sure, it's all well and good to not pay taxes on it down the road, with your method of putting it in traditional 401ks and then controlling the tax on the backside, you can potentially cut your effective rate on that down to 0 or pretty darn close. And I'd love to hear you just kind of talk through that real quick, just for the audience.
Yeah, that whole thing changed everything for me as well. So when I realized the Roth Conversion Ladder was possible, that just opened the floodgates for me as far as like really trying to maximize every pre-tax account that I can. So up until that point, I had been maxing out my retirement accounts, and I had thought of my life in 2 phases. It was before standard retirement age and after standard retirement age. So a lot of times, especially at that point in the whole community, everyone was like, I'm not contributing to my retirement accounts because I'm retiring early. And blah, blah, blah. And I was always like, this is crazy because early retirement contains standard retirement.
It's not exclusive.
Right. You don't choose one or the other. Early retirement contains standard retirement. So I was always of the mindset like, all right, well, I'm still planning for standard retirement. So, this 403B, which was a nonprofit version of a 401k that I was maxing out at the time. I'm like, this is fine. I'm maxing this out. And yeah, maybe I'll have too much in there potentially, but I still have to plan for my 65 years to death. So why not use some tax optimized accounts to save for that? So up until I found the whole Roth Conversion Ladder, I was always like just planning 2 stages of my life, the before standard retirement age and after. So then I started doing research into ways to get that money out of the 403B or 401k or IRA, traditional IRA, and all those pre-tax accounts before standard retirement age. And that's what led to the Roth Conversion Ladder. So the idea behind the Roth Conversion Ladder is you're allowed to transfer money from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, and you just pay tax when you do that transfer. And then 5 years later, after that transfer, you can take that money out of the Roth tax-free because you've already paid tax on it. So for an early retiree, that's amazing because for a standard retiree, they're working their entire lives. So they can't do that transfer because they're going to pay tax on that money. And if they're earning a full salary, then, they're just going to get taxed a crazy amount of money on that. So it doesn't make sense to do that. But for an early retiree who's, retired at 40, they've got 25 years before they hit 65 that they can slowly transfer all that money over, paying the minimum amount of tax just every year, basing the amount they roll over on how much, tax-free space they have left or how much 10% bracket space they have left or whatever. And they can just slowly do that over years and pretty much get all that money completely tax-free. So it's tax-free going into the traditional IRA. It's tax-free, hopefully, if you plan your rollovers right. And then it's tax-free when you withdraw it from the Roth. So that changed the game for me completely. So I was already doing research into some of this stuff. But as soon as I found out that I could actually tap into that money first, then it was like, all right, what is every single way I can contribute my money pre-tax? And then that led to sort of like all these other strategies like front loading and all this crazy stuff that I eventually started researching and writing about. So yeah, that was as much of a game changer for me as it sounds like it was for you, Brett. So
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that should be an aha moment for everyone out there. And you definitely will have a link in the show notes for Brandon's article about the Roth IRA conversion ladder. So the show notes are at choosefi.com/017. But yeah, just to drill down on that just for one more second, just so everybody understands, it's essentially for the early retiree, you have no income, right? I mean, that's the play here. So the taxable event is the conversion. So taking it from your regular 401k and putting it into a Roth, as Brandon said, that's a taxable event. So let's say you move $40,000 over, you're going to have $40,000 of income on your tax return. But now you have the standard deduction, you have personal exemptions, who knows, you might have child credits or something. Your tax rate, your effective tax rate on that $40,000 that you converted is going to be either zero or pretty darn close. So the play is ultimately pulling all that money out at essentially a 0% effective tax rate. Now, obviously, the question that should be going in your head is, okay, what do I do the first 5 years? Because like Brandon said, you can pull that out after 5 years, right, Brandon?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So I think for the early retiree, it would be to have 5 years of living expenses in your taxable accounts, or at least this is how I understand it, is to have 5 years of living expenses in your taxable accounts, and you draw that down over that first 5 years, all the while each year you're doing this conversion. So then you get to year 6 or whatever it may be, year 5, however we want to call it. And each subsequent year you have that conversion from 5 years in the past, which again, you've paid essentially zero in tax on. So on a traditional 401k, you paid nothing in tax up front and you're paying essentially nothing in tax when you pull it out. So, I mean, that is a remarkable thing. I mean, that is a true game changer. So Brandon, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, it was just as like I said, it was as much as of a game changer for me as it was for everyone else that read it, and yeah, it just completely changed everything. So I was very excited to figure it out.
The one thing that y'all haven't mentioned, though, is how does that come into play with the 10% penalty when you're withdrawing your money before you're 59 and a half? Just figure, how does that work into that picture?
It's there's no penalty. So if you wait the 5 years, there's no penalty because you can take out contributions to a Roth at any time. So
that's
if you
the crucial word. Sorry to interrupt you. It's contribution. So yeah, everyone remember
exactly.
that.
So the contributions to a Roth you can take out at any time. So I could pop $5,000 into my Roth IRA right now, and then tomorrow I could take it out and not get penalized because that's with post-tax money. So the conversion is a bit different. Obviously, you're converting it, so it's not an actual contribution; it's more of a conversion. And the rule there is you just have to leave it in the Roth for 5 years, and then you can take it out. So yeah, no penalty at all if you wait the 5 years, and that's why, as Brad said, you build this ladder. So you can either do it two ways. You could do it, just like taking advantage of the lowest tax rate. If you don't actually need that money, then you could just every year you could convert as much as you want tax free, and then that's fine. But if you need the money, then convert as much as you need. So if you know in 5 years you're going to need $40,000 a year, then every year you just convert $40,000. You're going to maybe pay a little tax on it, but that's going to be $40,000 that you can then take out of your Roth IRA every year if you continue rolling it over. And yeah, it's completely penalty free.
Yeah, that's really, like I said, absolutely crucial. So hopefully everyone is really taking this in. So Brandon, I want to actually just kind of go back and go back to your origin, if you don't mind. So one of the things that we talked about with Justin from Root of Good was kind of like hacking college and the decision for college. And I'd be curious, and I don't know the answer to this. You might not have an interesting story, but I'd love to hear, like, did frugality come into play with your college decision? Did you do anything that's especially interesting to save money or to not come out with debt, or did you come out with debt? I'd just love to hear it.
Well, it wasn't actually. Luckily, it was due to not getting in my first choice school, which is awesome. I'm so happy that happened. So,
I got denied. Best thing ever.
Yeah, it wasn't great at the time, but looking back on it, it was. So I applied. I was in North Carolina at the time. And I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I'd moved to North Carolina in 8th grade and went to high school down there. So for college, I applied to UNC Chapel Hill and Duke. And Duke was my first choice school. But I don't know, maybe some people in the audience know that Duke is a private school and UNC Chapel Hill is a public school. And I think the tuition difference was crazy. I think Duke was over $25,000 a year at least. And then UNC was like right around $5,000 a year because I had in-state tuition. So I applied to both, but I had my heart set on Duke. And then I got waitlisted at Duke and I got accepted to Chapel Hill. And I wasn't going to find out if I got into Duke until like really close to when I would start pretty much. And so I ended up making the decision, like Chapel Hill was beautiful. I loved it there. And I was like, I'm just going to go there. And, it's not as highly ranked as Duke is, but it's still, top 25 school. And so I went there and then I ended up not getting in the wait list wasn't successful for Duke anyway. So I'm glad I made a decision when I did and not waited to find out I didn't get in anyhow. But yeah, so I lucked out. I got into one of my most favorite places in the world now. I love Chapel Hill so much, and UNC was in a fantastic school. The computer science department there was one of the first in the country. And it was a great education, and it was all in-state tuition. So I left school probably with, I don't know, I want to say between 10 and 15 grand worth of student loans still. And then I paid $131 a month for I don't know how many years because it was such a low interest rate, and it was the oldest thing on my credit report. So it was like the best thing for my credit history. So I kept it on there for years and years, paying just $131 a month, but eventually paid it off. I then went back to get a graduate degree, and that's a little bit more exciting if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, I always had planned, I wanted to try to get either a master's or a PhD or something. But obviously, when I found financial independence, I knew it wasn't going to be to get a job. It wasn't going to be, resume motivated or anything like that. But I still wanted to do it. I just wanted to see if I could do it. So we moved up to Vermont, and because my wife got a job up there and we love the mountains and things like that. So we moved up there, And when we moved up, I realized that we were living like within 15 minutes from an Ivy League university. So I was like, man, that would be sweet. Since I didn't get my fancy Duke degree, I could get,
Nice.
get an Ivy League diploma from another good school. So I was like, I wonder if I could do it for free if I'm an employee. So I started looking into it, and it was like, yeah, if you work here for a year, you can get a free master's, and only a certain number of programs you could take. But yeah, you could get a master's. And so at the time, I was working remotely for a Boston company. And it was a good situation, like I had a lot of freedom and stuff. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. So I applied for a software developer position at the university, and I got it. And then I worked for a year, and then I applied to the program and got in. And then 3 years of hell started. And then
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. If I remember going there and working for that first year, and I'm like, why isn't everyone getting a free Ivy League degree? This is crazy. Why aren't people doing this? And then like 2 weeks into the program, and I was like super stressed, and I had so much work to do, and I still had a full 40-hour week job. And I was like, this is why nobody's doing it. Like, they're not stupid like me. They're not taking this crazy thing on. So yeah, it was pretty miserable, but now that I've done it, I'm glad I did it, and it was actually pretty cool. So yeah, so that was completely free. Besides some taxes, they tax you on the education benefit. But yeah, it was a free master's. So that was a little bit more of an interesting story than my undergrad anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely a hack that you pulled off there. There's definitely different ways of doing it, isn't it? I mean, but I think the big thing is college is changing. The value of college seems to be rapidly changing. And to our audience, in this rapidly changing environment, you need to be asking these questions. Do I need to go into 6 figures of student loan debt in order to get a job? And if I decide to make that choice, what career path will align with my ultimate goal? Does this make sense? So it's always nice to hear a case study like yours where, you just did it a little differently.
The kids in my program that were getting a master's, and they were paying like $45,000 a year to get this master's degree. And they were right out of like getting their bachelor degree, which was also like 6 figures worth. It's just absolutely crazy. And like, I really enjoyed the program, but it was like, I couldn't imagine what kind of job the program would prepare you for. It was like a Master of Arts and Liberal Studies, which was a complete 180 from what I had done in undergrad, computer science. And it was great, but it's like, what are these kids doing? They're getting so much debt, and the job prospects from that debt are just not that great. So yeah, I completely agree. I think the education landscape's changing so much. And even for computer science, like I came out of there, even though it was a great education, like I came out of there being able to explain algorithms and, theoretical stuff. But it was like, am I actually going to be able to build stuff? Like, we built a lot of like programs and things like that, but you could have easily, self-taught, which a lot of my colleagues in my career were self-taught, and they were great developers. So yeah, I think the whole brand name education isn't as important as I thought it was when I was younger, and especially after completing an Ivy League supposedly prestigious thing. My much cheaper state school, I would say, was a better education, and then I'm sure you could get even better educations if you just really focus and teach yourself, or trade schools or community colleges. There's loads of options, but I think it's just a matter of how hard you work. And yeah, it's not that name brand.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I just want to kind of ask you a couple of like quick hit questions, if you don't mind. Your first year in whatever your first job was, did you max out your 401k?
Yeah, so my first year was in Scotland. So my wife is from Scotland, and I studied abroad in Scotland my junior year. And I moved over as soon as I graduated, and my first job was here in Scotland, which is where I'm talking to you from now. And yeah, over here it's a personal pension, and it is my only regret of ever maxing out a retirement account, only because this thing is locked down so hard, and the funds are terrible. Like I can't get it out. I can't get it out at all. I've tried to look into it and try to figure out how to get it out, and I cannot get it out of there no matter what.
What an awesome confession. I love that.
So I got this money that's in these terrible funds because that's the only options I have.
Yeah.
I can't move it. And I probably technically should be reporting it to the US government because you have to report if you have foreign accounts. But I haven't done it in years past.
I can edit this out for you.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm still anonymous, so I can share some of this stuff. But yeah, the rules are different. Like I read some things that say personal pensions, you don't have to, since it's not actually money. Like it's going to be a defined benefit, I guess, when I hit some certain age. So it's not really money. But anyway, so it's this big stress, this headache, and it's not even worth it. So yeah, so I did max it out, but that's my one regret.
What's the most expensive car you've ever bought?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a good story. So this is one of my secrets I shared at one of the Ecuador Chautauquas, which was very embarrassing because
taking advantage of your honesty.
Yeah, well, it was at these Chautauquas. You like introduce yourself. It's like a truth and a lie, or two truths and a lie, or something like that. And one of my truths was this, and Mr. Money Mustache was right over across the room, and he was staring at me, and I felt
you got a truck.
No, I didn't get a truck. I got worse. I got like a crappy SUV. So my wife and I went and lived in China for 3 months, and then within a few days of moving back from China, we were moving to Vermont, and neither of us had ever been to Vermont, and we had to do all this stuff. We had no belongings or car or anything. So I leased a Toyota RAV4 because I was like, well, I need it for the snow. I don't have time to look into like used cars because up until then I'd only ever had used cars. I was like, I don't have.
I just want to put this in perspective. You leased a 14 mile per gallon SUV. I just want to clarify.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and I was like, well, people rent houses and they appreciate. So renting a depreciating asset makes a bit of sense, And then I was like, yeah, I'll just lease it for 2 years and that's fine. Whatever. It's just a single payment. And yeah. So anyway, I did that and it was awful. It was a really nice, whatever. It was a nice car and it handled the snow okay. But yeah, those payments were stupid. And then just handing it back to the dealer was stupid. And so yeah, besides that is that's the newest car ever because it was brand new. Every other car has been at least, I would say, 10 years old. And right now we own a 2006 Honda Jazz, which is like the UK equivalent of a Honda Fit, which is now my favorite car. And that costs I think that cost $3,400. And we bought it a few years ago. And it's been fantastic. What
do we call that in the fire community? An Econo hatchback? Is that the class that it fits into?
Yeah, exactly. So, so I have a little redemption there. But yeah, that was such a bad move. But what do? You live and you learn, I guess.
Write a blog post about it.
I know. Yeah, I have a blog post that's been in my to-do list for years, and it's like all the stupid mistakes I've made because sometimes I think, obviously I'd put all of my finely tuned ideas that I've thought long and hard about and edited and all that stuff on the blog. So I don't want people to think that I'm just done everything right financially. There's so many stupid things I've done in the past. So one of these days I'll get around to writing that article. And
nice. Yeah, that was actually my next question, which is going to be instances where you don't walk the walk or optimize things. Obviously we all make mistakes, right? So I don't expect you to list out every single mistake you've ever made, but does anything jump to mind where you don't walk the walk of the FI community or your advice even?
Absolutely. Yeah. My biggest, and this is something I still struggle with even today on my to-do list, I say I have invest in VXUS because I want to increase my international exposure to 15%. So this is in my to-do list to do today. And yet I'm looking at the market and it's up and VXUS is up and it was up yesterday, which is why I didn't do it yesterday. And it was down the day before, but I was like, oh, it's going to go down further. And it didn't. It's just been going up since and I still haven't invested. So market timing for me is such a huge problem that I can't solve. And I solved it for a bit and I set up automated investing for my taxable account. And then I canceled it stupidly because I was like, nah, I don't want, this is too high. I don't want to keep investing in this. And then it's just kept going up and I haven't invested. So now I have so much cash that I need to deploy. And it's always been a huge problem. Luckily, the retirement accounts are always automated because that was just coming out of payroll deduction. So that was at least that kept me good. But yeah, my taxable account is either way too much cash and it's stupid. Like it won't even be like a logical thing. Like it'll be like, oh, VXUS is at 47.21. My hockey number is 15. So once it gets to 47.15, then I'll buy it. And then it just goes up from there. And it's like, why did I do that? That's just so stupid. So yeah, see, that's my biggest thing. And it's something I still
We're going to set up a lifeline feature for you on this segment called the Walk of Shame. We're going to allow you to lifeline in Jim Collins and have him just rant at you for a second. And then we'll get you right back on track. We've got a fix for you, buddy.
Oh, Jim knows all about it. I talk to him about it constantly. I'm like, I'm such an idiot. Why am I doing this again? But yeah, this is, you're uncovering all my dirty laundry on this episode.
Indeed.
Just ruining your brand one question at a time.
No, it's hard though, man. I'm with you. My issue is not market timing as much as just having way too much in cash and just not even contemplating buying it. So at least you're one step ahead of me there. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about setting up that just automating everything. Like if and this is, advice for the audience, which is take your brain out of this. If Brandon of all people can get screwed up with this, you can too. And you almost assuredly will. Like it happens to everyone. So what you need to do with investing is take your brain out of it. It's that simple.
Yep, absolutely. And then that's actually something Jim Collins was saying to me. He's like, I was talking to him about some of this stuff, just like this. Yeah, just like, why am I doing this? And he's like, my daughter's probably a much better investor than you because she has no idea what's going on. She doesn't pay attention to any of it. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Like she probably is much better. So yeah, I completely agree. Take your brain out of it as much as possible. Set up your plan and figure out what you want to do. Like, yeah, set on whatever percentages and rebalance if you want and things like that. But the actual execution, take your brain out of it as much as possible.
You're going to get off this conversation and still not go invest in that, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm going to put that on my to-do list for tomorrow. And whatever's going to happen tomorrow.
I want that ticker to be red.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
So stupid.
So Brandon, is your investing, is it almost exclusively index funds? Like, I mean, do you have anything else that you invest in, I guess, real estate or anything else that might be a lending club or something interesting like that? Or is it, and I don't mean to say that index funds are not interesting, but that would be the optimized advice, right? Is buy on a regular basis on index funds. Like Jack Bogle says, wake up 50 years from now and hope to have a cardiologist next to you when you open up that statement. Is there anything that you're doing that's a little different or something that you do that might not be optimized, but you just enjoy?
Nope. I'm pretty good at that. So I am fully in index funds, way too much cash. Like I said, I'm currently at 10% international stock market index fund. I want to get to 15, and everything else is in either the total stock market index fund or the 500 fund. And the only reason I'm in the 500 fund is because I did some tax loss harvesting, I think last year or maybe the year before. And then the market has just gone up straight from there. So I didn't want to sell that to get back into, my total stock market index fund because then I would have had a tax hit. So that's still in there. So there's a little bit of 500 fund. And then to balance out the overweight in the large caps with the 500 fund, I have a small cap tax optimized small cap. I forget what the ticker symbol is, but it's just a Vanguard index fund as well. So I have a little bit in that, and that's in my Roth because, that has more potential to go up more. Obviously, having that in my Roth, that's going to be tax-free when I bring that out. So that's it. And that's cool. No real estate. We currently rent a furnished place. We literally don't own anything, pretty much. And so no real estate. Own 2 houses in my life, but I'm a happy renter again, and I will be for the foreseeable future. So, and no lending club. That freaks me out. It's just like, actually, your business partner, Brad Alexi, he has an amazing post on Miles Dividend MD. Talking about his thoughts on Lending Club, which I completely agree with. It's the best post I think about Lending Club or any of that P2P lending. And it's like a junkier junk bond that's less liquid and higher fees and all this really bad stuff about it. So I don't touch that at all.
Yeah, and we actually chatted about that on your podcast a little bit. And, it's funny, as I was the one who sheepishly said, yeah, I have a little bit of money in Lending Club. It was not a tiny amount, but 15 or 20K. And since that conversation, actually, it has been just tanking. I mean, it's crazy. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. The defaults, and this might be like a canary in the coal mine for the larger economy or something, but defaults have gone up huge amount in just the last year or so, to the point where my overall annualized return was like 9 and change, or it might have even been over 10 when we talked, and now it's down in like the low 6s. So I mean, it's just plummeting. So yeah, I mean, as loan repayments are coming in, I'm pulling it out of there and not reinvesting. So yeah, I'm getting out of Lending Club. But so I kind of wanted to ask you about how you've seen yourself evolve just psychologically as you've gotten closer to FI, and now that you're at FI and not working anymore. And if I could just put a little kind of sidebar story here, since I do know Brandon so well. I think literally the very first time I met him was in New Orleans at FinCon. And we went to the famous place, the Café du Monde. And I think we had these little donuts. They're called beignets. And literally an order of these things are like $2.45 or something like that. And first time I ever met Brandon, and just knowing him from online, him and his wife Jill are across the table from me, and they literally split an order of these things. So I'm like, man, these things are so delicious. You can pop them in like 2 seconds. And here they are eating 1.5 beignets each. And I guess kind of fast forward to last year at FinCon, and we were out in San Diego, and we went to Stone Brewery for lunch, 4 of us or 5 of us, I guess. And you guys each had a nice expensive entree and beer or beers, and it just struck me that you're changed, and not fundamentally as a person, but you've kind of relaxed a little bit with your finances. And I'd love to kind of throw it over to you and just say, like, how have you noticed yourself evolve over the last handful of years?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I've changed dramatically, but I also think old habits die hard. So back in the day, and probably around that time we were in New Orleans, like I was so hyper focused on reaching financial independence that like nothing else mattered. And it was really bad. There's an article on my site, Happiness Through Subtraction, where I talk about this, but I didn't realize it, but I was getting depressed. Like we were living in Vermont at the time, and I was really, we had this really nice house on 5 acres and stuff, but we were in the middle of nowhere. And this is also the time that I was getting my master's, and the blog was starting to take off, and that was taking up a lot of time. And obviously I was still working. So I was really busy, and all I wanted to do was save money. So like anytime like an opportunity for fun would arise, like sometimes I would do it and then I would just be miserable. And then I'd be like, well, why am I doing this? I could be at home, like either getting homework done or writing a Mad Fientist article or whatever. And I'd be saving money. So for 2 years, I really isolated myself, which then isolated my wife because she's Scottish and here she is in a foreign country and we're in the middle of the woods, and our husband wants to do is like read tax documents and things. So it wasn't a good situation at all. And yeah, I definitely went into the deprivation area, which was bad. So finally, my wife was just like, what is going on? This is not, we can't live like this anymore. Like, you're miserable. I think you're depressed. And I didn't realize that at the time. And she's like, I'm not happy because, we don't do anything, and you're not happy. I'm not happy. So once she said that, it like sort of snapped me out of it. And I was like, wow, yeah, this has actually gotten pretty stupid. So we said, all right, let's just sell the house. Let's get out of here. Let's go back to being closer to friends and family. And we did. So then during this like sort of not downtime, but like depressed time, I hit my number and I wasn't any happier at all. And I was like, well, shit, I've been, planning for this and putting off happiness until I hit this goal. And now I hit it, and it's like nothing's different, which looking back on it now is like obvious. Yeah, of course, an extra $1 in my bank account on a screen, the number on the screen is not going to instantly make me happy. But at the time I was like, well, this is awful. This is terrible. I guess I'm just not going to be happy or whatever. So anyway, hit the number, and then we decided we're going to leave, and that's fine. And then my work asked me, I handed in my notice. I'm like, hey, I'm going to Scotland, so this is it for me. And I didn't plan on getting another job because, I'm financially independent. And they asked me to stay on remotely. So I was like, you know what? Our house hasn't sold yet. This is going to be maybe a complicated moving back overseas. I was like, that'll make me less stressed, because at the time I was like, pretty much right at the FI number. It wasn't like loads over anything. There wasn't a lot of buffer. And I was like, yeah, this is good. I'll just keep working remotely. I don't want to have to wake up early. I won't have to commute. I won't have to go to these meetings, all the stuff that I hated about work. I was like, I won't have to do that. I can just code, which I love writing code, and that'll be great. So I did that, and I ended up doing that for 2 years. So, we moved back to Scotland. We're a lot happier already just off the bat because, we're actually doing fun things with our friends and family and seeing people and interacting with others. But I also was working when I wasn't expecting to. So after about, I don't know, maybe half a year to a year of doing that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let loose. I'm going to not worry about money for the first time in my life. Because like I said before, I've always been frugal and I was always saving money. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. This is a whole salary I didn't expect to have. So I'm just going to go crazy. So we went crazy. We spent 3 months traveling. I told my work, I was like, hey, I'm going on a 3-month trip, so I can either come back when I'm done or not. And they said, yeah, come back. So that was good. And we went on a 3-month trip and we were eating out 3 meals a day. Fair enough, we were in Southeast Asia for most of it, so it was quite cheap. But we were still, even when we got back to Edinburgh, we were like, it was a new city to us. So we were like going out and having drinks and going out and checking out the local restaurants and all that sort of stuff. So we did all that for a year, and it just felt like I was just throwing money away, just crazy. I tallied it up just like I do every year. And I think between the two of us, my wife and I, we spent $35,000, which I guess we normally fluctuate somewhere between 30 and 33, maybe even 34 the year before. I'm not even sure. It was so insignificant, the dent that it made in our actual overall spending, that it was laughable. And wow. I was just like, this is insane. So all of the habits, obviously, I wasn't going out and buying a Mercedes, and I wasn't doing anything that I didn't want, like anything that like society says you should do if you just spending crazy money. I was doing everything that I wanted. Like it felt like I could have and do anything and everything that I wanted. And it's just the fact that over the years, I've figured out what that actually is, rather than just buying what people tell you should want, or what society says you should want, or what the Joneses want, or what any of that. I was just buying everything that I wanted. And it didn't move the needle that much because I don't need that much, which is a huge realization. And that's been I would say that's the best thing about financial independence. And it wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if I didn't have that extra year, because then I would have never tested that upper limit. Like I tested the lower limit when we were in Vermont and deprivation and all that. But I think testing the upper limit was just as important, because now we dialed back our spending. Like we actually realized we didn't like to travel as much as we did that year, because we like getting excited about the trips rather than just being constantly going somewhere else every month or something. So like now it's not deprivation. It's not like, oh, I wish I was traveling right now. It's like, no, actually, this is a great level, and it just happens to cost less than traveling every month like we did last year. So it was great, and it's completely changed me. So yeah, if you see me now and we're going out to a brewery with friends, then I'm not going to worry about any of it, because it's like, well, this only happens every so often. It's not going to move the needle at all. I won't even be able to tell by the end of the year. And I'm just going to enjoy it rather than, freak out and pick the cheapest thing on the menu and try to convince Jill to share with me.
What I think is so amazing about what you just shared with us is, intentionally or unintentionally, you confined yourself to this box to hit financial independence. And then essentially what you described is trouble moving on or establishing what that post-FI picture actually looked like. There was a transitional phase that had some ups and downs for you. And then the message that you're sharing right now is really powerful. It's kind of almost this idea of exploring your outer limits in this FI world, which has unlimited flexibility and freedom. And you're just kind of trying to find what the perimeters are. Where can you not go past? And that's what it sounds like you've been doing for the last year or so. And I think you kind of painted a really cool picture for our audience. And for some people, maybe they can learn from that and kind of prepare themselves for it, because we fully anticipate that the tools that you're building, in our community and your community, which is probably very shared, they're looking for ways to get to FI faster. And then once you're at FI, what comes next? And I think it's cool because you have just gone through that. And what you shared with us is what that transition for you mentally actually looked like.
What after Fi is the huge question. I'm realizing that more and more now, how important that is. And that's where a lot of my writing is going to go in the future. And I'm currently recording all of my sort of thoughts and feelings and all the things that I've gone through since I quit. And I'm going to tally that all up into like my first year freedom post or something like that, where I describe everything, because it has been a roller coaster, and there's lots of things that I didn't think about before I took the plunge that maybe I wish I would have. But yeah, the question of what's after Fi is a huge one.
So Brandon, what's the most surprisingly positive part of the post-Fi life that you just wouldn't have anticipated?
Oh man, yeah, it's at first the really cool thing. So we travel a lot. So every single free vacation day was like used up 2 years in advance because I was planning where we were going to go and things like that. So like every day off had sort of like a trip or something. But every so often, maybe around Christmas, you'd have like maybe 2 days off where you weren't traveling. So it was like, I could do anything. These are free days. These are days off. We're not going anywhere. Anything is possible. So that feeling is like all the time, which is really, really cool. So we kicked off the post-work life for me by going on a 3-month trip around the world. And I think mentally the whole time I just felt like it was a long vacation or one of these sabbaticals that we had taken before. And I think somewhere deep down, I just always expected, well, I'll have to go back to work when we get back. When we got back from that trip, and it was the first Monday after getting back, and I just woke up and I was like, wow, this is just life now. There's no plans, there's no family commitments or anything, and you have this day off, and it's just like unlimited possibilities. So that's just been a fantastic feeling, and I think about it often.
Yeah, I can see that. I have to imagine that at some point there's this fear that this isn't real. I'm going to have to go back to work. I bet it takes a while to work through that and realize, no, I actually did it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was, especially after that big long trip, it was, it just felt like a vacation. And we had done a few of those sabbaticals before. Like when I mentioned we lived in China for 3 months, like I took 3 months off to go live in China, and we did it when we moved back from Scotland to America. We took some months off, and so I was used to that feeling of having a few months of freedom. And yeah, it was totally, when I got back, it just felt like I was just going to have to go back to work. And even though that was 3 months after I quit, it still felt like, yeah, all right, I'm back to work. But yeah, that first Monday when I didn't have to go back and I just had all of these things that I had wanted to get done and I could just start making progress on them, it was just a fantastic feeling.
I think what's been really amazing about this podcast that we just did today, basically all the podcasts that you've done that have been very well received by everybody that's interested in the FIRE community, but they've all been focused on other people. And I don't feel like you have ever gone into this level of depth about the human element to your own personal story, which is so interesting. So I appreciate you being willing to explore your story with us, both your wins and then also maybe where you strayed away from the path a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. You guys asked some good questions, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So Brandon, before we get into the hot seat questions, I just wanted to ask one last thing that, we talked about your past, but what does the future look like for you? You talk about these projects that you're working on. Is it mostly Mad Fientist? Do you have other things that you want to or could possibly share with us today? What does your life look like 5 years from now? I mean, have you thought about that as intentionally as that?
Yeah, no, it's something I think about a lot. And when you have the freedom to do anything, you start thinking about, what do you want to do with your life? There's some really deep questions that, most people don't have to face until they're, maybe in their 60s or 70s, because most people are just on the standard script. They're on the treadmill. They're working, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're, doing all of that. And then when you don't do all of that, then you're sort of like, well, what's the point of me, and what is this all about, and what do I want to accomplish? So yeah, I think about that a lot, and it's actually been really good. I've been very productive, and this is something I still, it's an internal struggle, because I have the freedom to not work as hard, and yet I find that I want to work as hard. So part of me just worries that I'm working very hard because that's just what I'm used to doing, and maybe I should chill out. But then another part of me just knows that I get a lot of happiness from creating things and creating Mad Fientist stuff and creating things in other fields and other hobbies that I have. And so, yeah, that's something I'm still debating internally. And that's, I mentioned the Chautauqua in Ecuador, and I gave a talk about, how we have this opportunity as early retirees to do anything and do anything really well. We could, if we wanted to be a PGA Tour golfer, we could literally practice all day, every day. Not literally. I don't usually misuse the word literally. Like I think I did it twice this time, and I don't usually do that.
I was happy with your use of it. Go for it, man.
So figuratively, we could practice all day, every day, and get really good and potentially be, a PGA Tour golfer if we wanted to, because we don't have to work for a living. We could devote all of our time to our passions and our hobbies. So my talk was sort of focusing on like how to actually master things and how to become the best at these things. And in the talk I had mentioned, I was like, I have the ability to not work so hard, but I have this drive that I want to, work as hard as Elon Musk and do like some incredible things. And then Mr. Money Mustache had his talk, and he was talking about all these other things, about like how all these other things contribute to happiness. And I asked him a question. I was like, obviously you saw my talk, and I'm really wanting to work hard at all these things that I'm passionate about, and I want to make a lot of progress on these goals that I have. And I think being Elon Musk, he doesn't have a very balanced, happy life. And how do you like reconcile that? And how do I, not just waste my freedom that I've given myself and just be constantly working? And he's like, you have to focus on these other things like community and health and family and all of these other things that contribute to happiness. And he's like, you know what, you can be Elon Musk if you want, but just do it for a few hours a day and still focus on all those other things. And that was like a eye-opening thing for me. I was like, yeah, you know what, like I can dedicate all this effort and time, but I just don't have to do it all the time. I can be Elon Musk for 2 hours a day, which is a tentative blog post that I'm hopefully going to write one day once I get around to it. But yeah, so that was a big eye-opening thing for me. And that's something I'm trying to focus on, is like, yes, I can devote, focused effort to these projects that I really want to accomplish and complete, but then I can relax and just like cook dinner with my wife and just like watch a show on Netflix or something and read for a couple hours before I fall asleep and things like that. So yeah, so my life has very big defined goals. Mad Fientist related, yes, I want to really curate my content a lot more, since I've been writing for 5 years now. It's, not structured like I would have structured it if it was a book. So I want to like find ways to let people read my content easier if they're just stumbling upon my site for the first time. I also want to write a lot more software. I love writing custom software because I love writing code. So a lot more Mad Fientist software, either travel related or financial related stuff. And then, yeah, just a lot of actual passion, creative projects that I want to try to tackle that are very intimidating because, I think I've put them off so long in my life because I'm worried that I'm not going to be good at creating something like that, like more creative space, like music and things like that. And I've put it off because there's always something else you can focus on, earning money or hitting financial independence. But now it's like, well, it's time to put up or shut up. So I'm spending a lot of time in more creative fields as well. So.
All right. Well, have you heard our hot seat segment yet?
I haven't, no.
Oh, gosh.
You're in for a real treat.
I am so excited for you. All right. Hold your breath.
Try not to laugh.
Okay.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
That is amazing. I'm so glad I didn't know that was coming.
Probably the most badass intro of all time.
That is really good.
And it was for a personal finance podcast.
That is fantastic. Yeah. I was always proud of my intro music for the just absolute ridiculous dorkiness of it for my podcast. But that is...
We need to win some sort of Campy award. I mean, I want a trophy somewhere. We're excited to get a chance to introduce you to this and get you to answer some of these questions.
Nice. I'm pumped. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Number one, your favorite blog that's not your own.
Oh, man. Well, I have to... I'll give you a few. So Get Rich Slowly was the first blog I ever read, like I said. So was amazing. I love JD's work. So his Money Boss site is great. His writing is just fantastic. So he's always a long-term favorite. And then Get Rich Slowly is what introduced me to Early Retirement Extreme, and Early Retirement Extreme changed my life. Obviously, that just set this whole crazy path in motion. So those are two long-term favorites, but I really don't read as much anymore. Like I mentioned just previously, like I'm really trying to focus on creating stuff. So the more I consume, the less I create, but there's still a few that I still read. And anytime Mr. Money Mustache puts out a new post, I know he's got something interesting to say. So I'm always excited about that. Wait But Why is a great one. Just loads of varied stuff there. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one, moneylab.co. I used to read a lot of like business and small business and entrepreneurship blogs, but then I just pretty much gave them all up just because I don't care about all those money making opportunities anymore. But Money Lab, it's Matt do you know how to pronounce his name, Brad?
I think Giovanisi. Is that right?
Yeah, Matt Giovanisi. I think so. He does all these just really cool experiments and he documents them all. And it's just like so much good information, and you just follow along as he's doing it, and it's fantastic. Like I'm addicted to it. So those are the three that I currently consume anytime something new comes out. So
that's great. Now we had someone else mention Wait But Why, which I hadn't heard of before.
Yeah, Carl from 1500 Days was on, and he mentioned that. And I recollect Paula from Afford Anything. She mentioned that on her podcast as well. So that's very interesting commonality.
Yeah, he puts a lot of research into his stuff. He's got a really good sense of humor, and he just dives really deep into a lot of interesting topics. So yeah, I love it. He's the man. Tim Urban.
Let's see. Question number 2, your favorite article of all time.
All right. This is going to have to be a post on Get Rich Slowly that was a book review of Early Retirement Extreme, because like I said, Get Rich Slowly pointed me to Early Retirement Extreme. And I did a Google search because I was like, when did I find out about this whole crazy world? And it was back in May of 2011. And it must have been JD's book review of Early Retirement Extreme. And that did everything. And that just changed the trajectory of my life. So that's going to be the one.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it's funny because one of JD's articles changed the trajectory of my entire life as well. He got me into travel hacking. He wrote an article about 5 or so years ago about the British Airways Visa card. And it was when there was a 100K bonus. I'm sure you probably remember that. And that was the very first card I signed up for. And what's funny is when we were down at Camp Mustache in Florida, JD was there, and I gave a speech on travel hacking there and got to kind of actually teach him how to use the British Airways miles. I mean, how amazingly full circle is that, right? And like
that is incredible.
Never used them. Created a post, taught millions of people how to use them, and then they were still sitting in the account.
But yeah, it's
I just read a recent Money Boss article, and he mentioned that. He's like, I signed up for this card way back in the day.
He started typing that as he's listening to Brad. I was sitting next to him. He started typing that as he's listening to Brad teach him how to use the points.
No way.
Yeah, true story.
So weird. Yeah, it's so weird. Like I've met JD a few times and we've hung out, and it's still surreal to me. Anytime we're hanging out, I'm like, this guy has really changed the course of my life in so many ways. And here I am hanging out with him. And then he was even wearing a Mad Fientist shirt. And I was like, this is insane.
He wore it every day of camp, man. I met him for the first time in this past January, and he is just a genuinely awesome person.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, he's such a cool dude. So yeah, it's a pleasure to know him now. But yeah, it's just amazing how much he's changed lots of people's lives, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here wearing my Mad Fientist shirt, actually, Brennan. You'll be happy to hear.
Nice.
And we're going to get you a Choose FI shirt. We're going to pick a nice material. I know you care about that.
Fantastic, yeah.
We'll have to take
T-shirt
notes from
quality has to be high.
No, we've been asking people different life hacks, and what we've basically found, the key to clothing, if you're in the fire community, is to be guest on different people's podcasts. So we're just going to keep that theme going.
Nice.
All right, buddy. Favorite life hack?
So, favorite life hack. Travel hacking, obviously. I'm a big fan, just like Brad. But I think it's going to go back to figuring out what makes you happy. Because like I said before, being able to feel like you can spend on everything and anything you want is just a hugely empowering thing. But obviously, you don't want to go broke. So really figuring out what makes you happy, and it changes. It really, like, something that made us happy 3 years ago doesn't make us happy today. And you always have to be, constantly assessing it. But, having your finger on that pulse is hugely important to not only being able to hit financial independence, but being able to be happy, once you do. So.
Very cool. Number 4, your biggest financial mistake?
Ooh, so this is something we didn't even talk about, but is, definitely my biggest one. So we immediately out of college, I moved to Scotland to be with my girlfriend, now wife. And, we thought we were adults. So we're like, all right, well, the first thing we have to do is buy a house. So we got a 95% mortgage and then borrowed the rest of the money from Jill's parents. So to buy a car so that we could get to work and to, cover the other 5% of the mortgage for the house. So anyway, so we had this house and we did it up over 2.5 years, and we did really well with it. We made over 50% in 2.5 years, and sold it right before the whole world collapsed in 2007. So at that time, the exchange rate was really good from US to UK. So we got like 2.097 for all of our pounds, and we were going to do half and half transferred to the States and then half just invested in the UK. But luckily the exchange rate was so good, so we did more than half to the States. And then the other half, I wanted to invest. And I was like, all right, I'm a big shot now. I want to invest in stocks. This is finally, I can have my portfolio that I always wanted. And so I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing though. So I think I just searched the internet for financial advisor, called some dude randomly. He came over to the house and was giving it all we'll go out golfing and, make me feel like a big shot. And then he put me into some mutual funds. He pretty much just picked the 5 that had performed the best over the last year. And he's like, look, at these things are amazing. Look at all the money they're earning. I was like, okay, that sounds good. And then he put it in, 20% in each. And that was it. And then he disappeared right off into the sunset. And then 2008 happened, and, it got cut in half, less than half, pretty much within, a few months of us investing it. And it had a bunch of crazy early redemption fees and maintenance fees. And we were just getting crushed, not from the market. Well, we were getting crushed from the market, but we were getting crushed from the company that was, that putting these funds on. And we were stuck, because if we took it out within the first 5 years, we would have got hit with huge fees. So anyway, long story short, that was when I learned never trust anyone else with your money. So from then on, I took it upon myself to do all the research myself and figure out what to invest. Because by the end of it, like by year 4, I just had enough. It was stressing me out. And I was like, screw it. The early withdrawal penalty is less now. It was only 2%, whereas it was 4% the year before and 6% the year before that and 8%. And I was like, I'm just going to eat the 2%. I just want it. And then I couldn't find the financial advisor. I struggled to find the company that actually had our money. So I never found the financial advisor. He was gone. I couldn't find him anywhere. Luckily, I had the documentation that led me to find the company where the money was. And after, lots of stress, I finally got that money back. And I was like, never again am I doing this. So sorry, that was a long-winded story, but that was definitely my biggest financial mistake. And it was a huge lesson for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, it sounds pretty painful. Question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
Just start. I'm a very analytical dude, and I was even more analytical, I guess, back in the day. And I would overanalyze any sort of thing that I wanted to do until I talked myself out of it. So I had loads of ideas that I wanted to do, creative stuff, websites, all this sort of stuff. And I would always just think like, well, I need an LLC. So now I need to set up an LLC before I can even start, a website or anything. And then that would be complicated. And then, that would just take all of my motivation away, and then I would never do anything. So it all came to a head when I turned 30. We went up and went skiing with friends and had a great day skiing. And then we were having drinks at the bar. And then we went back to the chalet we were all sharing. And then I had this like 30-year mid-quarter life crisis and just had a meltdown in front of all my friends. And I was like, what have I done with my life? I've done nothing. And it was awful. And my friends still, make fun of me about it today. And my wife was mad. She's like, what do you mean you haven't done anything? Like she took offense to it. And I was like, it was awful, but it was what I needed. So the next month I just started Mad Fientist. Like I would have overanalyzed that to death until I was, sick of the idea, but I was like, forget it. I'm just starting. So I started, and then I just started writing, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I deleted posts later because they were terrible, and I just got better over time. And anything, just start. So that is definitely the advice I would give, because you figure it out as you go, and you don't like. I would have never imagined any of this stuff would have got to the point it is now, and I never would have. If I would have tried to think of like, all right, what kind of blogger am I going to be, or what kind of site do I want, or anything, I would have never done anything because I wouldn't have came up with any unique ideas. But the unique ideas came as I just was trying to do it. And I think that's the thing with most things. You just start doing it, and then you just iterate and improve, and then you find better ideas as you go along. And those ideas would never come if you just hadn't started. So.
Okay, well, we have a bonus question for you. Your favorite thing that you purchased on Amazon last year, and if not Amazon, your favorite thing purchased online?
Oh, man. Geez, I don't know if I purchased any. Oh, no, I did. I got a brand new MacBook Pro. So when I quit my job, I had a really nice MacBook Pro, and I'll never go back to a PC. I was always against Macs, but now I understand why. They're just fantastic machines. So I had a really nice MacBook Pro, and then I got to keep it for a while. And then like a few months later, they're like, oh, hey, by the way, do you want to send back your computer since it's not yours? And I was like, oh, no. But then I knew the new version was coming out. So I treated, it was a business expense. So I was like, I'm going to get exactly what I want. And I got, I got the baseline model, like literally the 13-inch MacBook Pro without the touch bar thing, because I didn't need that, with no extra memory or anything like that. So it was the baseline MacBook Pro, but it's still expensive, and but it's fantastic. I'm just staring at it right now. It's so beautiful. So
for like half a second, I thought you were going to say, no, I didn't purchase anything on Amazon last year. I was thinking, he is the real deal.
I really struggled to think because, I think that was one of the few things that I actually did purchase on Amazon. So, it's totally worth it. I love it every time I spend so much time on it. So it's
absolutely
worth buying something well made when you use it constantly. So.
Well, this was a real treat, getting a chance to sit down with Brandon from the Mad Fientist and actually take some time to explore his personal story. So much of what he does is focused on the resources and the tools that are available to the early retiree. And many of us in the FI community recognize the value that he's bringing to the table. But I don't think that we've spent enough time actually exploring his personal story, the human element, and how the things that he's really good at and the things that he struggles with has led him to the place where he is now. And I think that taking some time to actually explore that and learn from it is useful in and of itself. So I hope that you enjoyed this kind of behind the scenes look at what drives the Mad Fientist, this origin story, if you will. And if you want to connect with the Mad Fientist, definitely go to his website, madfientist.com, MADFIENTIST, and also follow him on Twitter at Mad Fientist. And for those of you that were new to the Mad Fientist or were introduced to the Roth Conversion Ladder for the first time today, If you're very interested in that topic and you want to know exactly how it works and have someone break it down for you, we are going to do that on the episode that's going out this Friday, which will be episode 17R, our Friday roundup. And if you want to go to that episode, you can just go to choosefi.com/017R. And we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.